Hello and welcome. Today's Cram. This video is for the Cram session for the debate event on my argumentation course. This is the last event of the semester. So if you're finding this, it's for my argumentation class, the last event, which is the debate. A couple of things before we begin the event. Just giving feedback, general feedback to students when it comes to outlines or past speeches. A couple things you need to remember with the words I use, like if you just ramble on and or you list a bunch of things and there's no organization to it whatsoever, there's no narrative, that's when you get one of those got lost things. When you, I gotta put my hat on. There's a reason why I have a hat. Besides me taking a nap earlier in my hair. No, I'm just kidding. And then the other thing is when you're not clear on your distinction of sections and then they kind of are put together, that's when it's merged. But the one thing I wanted to address is sometimes you'll get these notes about you stepping out and doing something you're not supposed to do because of whatever the event is. Need to be your persuasion speech or your research debate and so forth. And when you get something like you weren't using the setup or anything that is pertaining to that particular event, that's important for your next speech or your next outline, because that means you're not following the directions or the instructions given. And considering that these things are in the syllabus, they are posted, of course, in the assignments, they're stated in class, there's slides for them and so forth. And considering how many students do it, when you get one of those things, don't just look at it like, oh, I messed up in the past. That means in the future, you need to be aware of following the directions of what's needed for the assignment. All right. So it might be specific for that event, that speech, but it goes to the overall idea of the messing it up and so forth. Sorry, I'm just judgmental. I'm losing this weight and I'm yeah. Anyways, it's Christmas time. This is why I'm recording it. A little bit flabbergasted because I got my old Christmas decorations and I realized my small little tree is not going to do it for the amount of decorations I have now. All right. Anyways, to move on to the event. All right. So that was the feedback. I just wanted to share that with you and so forth while my dog is staring me down. All right. Anyways, let's get going. So this event, see, in your previous speeches, you were given problem solution persuasion and then cause and effect for the research debate, which was actually, even though there was questions, it was more of a speech. But anyways, both of those require you to follow a setup, right? You had there are three main points. Three is the magic number, the rule of three in this class. And you had to go along with the setup I told you to do. In problem solution, it was problem, problem, solution. In cause and effect, it was cause, cause, effect. And in those things, you had these other little rules. Like, for example, the first problem, the first cause is like this overall problem. And then the second one, the main point two, is the problem or the cause that leads into your effect or solution. And then, of course, main point three is your effect or solution. It has that setup. And I choose problem solution and cause and effect because problem solution is the part of persuasion where every argument's a persuasion. Every argument's a persuasion. And problem solutions, you trying to change someone's behavior. Cause and effect is you trying to change someone's mind. And so remember that general setup, because in your resolution, it could be a policy issue, meaning changing behavior, or a value issue, which is changing minds. And so if you have that general setup already in the past, and that's why we did them, you just applied to it. All right. And that's why your outline, you could choose to repeat problem solution or cause and effect for the third event for this debate. All right. And speaking of that stuff, your outline is just that. It's an outline that you use that, You were supposed to have 5 references this time. That was the big change, 5 references, because it's just you having an idea how you would argue something if the resolution jumped in that area. You are in the of course the references is requirement because you just need more research because you're supposed to be an expert when you debate on these issues and so forth. And the thing I want you to know is, and I told you already in class, it is open book type situation on your prep time. You're given like 7 to 10 minutes of prep time. Usually debates it's 5 minutes. Unless it's parliamentary. Individual events usually 5 minutes. All right. So the reason why I'm telling you this is because I want you could take your outline and take notes or whatever from it, but you're not using your outline as your speech. You can't, because the resolution might not match your thesis. And that's the big change, because you're one of the big grading points in this event is for you to use the resolution to craft your speech. And that includes your thesis and your main points. And so if your outline is completely off, you obviously you can't use it. So what do? You just have those notes there. You have your references and so forth. And you just, take a sheet of paper, or in this case, a dry erase board. And we did keyword outlines where you write keywords and you elaborate from there. That's the whole point of elaboration. I kept knocking people every speech for reading off your speech. You're not supposed to do that. You can't do that in a job interview. You can't do that in a regular argument. So you can't read off speeches. And so this is the event where you can't read off a speech. So what you can do is take that material when you prep and, just have a basic setup. So, blank sheet. So if you had a resolution, yeah, you maybe have a thesis, right? And then you have your main points right here. Look at that, look at that, look at that. And you just keyword it. Keyword anything. Keyword anything. So let's go ahead and go to CNN.com. We're going to take the biggest headline from the news. And we're going to make some of these, some keywords. So let's see what some issues that pop up. Of course, Trump's on the cover because he just recently said he would suspend the U.S. Constitution. Former president said that. So maybe the resolution is that it's within a president's right in emergency situations to suspend the U.S. Constitution. That's a resolution, right? And so you would say, if you were for the resolution, you would have a keyword here, suspend. Oh, we got an ad. Thank you, CNN, for showing us an ad. By the way, I bought that hat. I'm not gonna lie, I bought the hat. That's why they keep trying to get me. Anyways, you would say something like some keywords: suspend, president power, and emergency or something. So your resolution would be something like your thesis for the resolution would be: it is within a right for U.S. president to suspend the Constitution in emergency situations. And what you're doing is trying to change someone's mind. You're not saying it's going to be done. You're just changing someone's mind. So it would be cause, effect, right? And so you would do something like talk about in historical times where in war situations that the U.S. president may cause the past effects. Resolution 2, cause 2 would be something like current issues like the national security threat that we had with terrorism and so forth. And then finally, the mind change you're going to have is that it doesn't matter who the president is. This is the unfortunate right that needs to be kept because of the history and so forth. See how that is? So you can actually take a confrontational subject like Trump, try to neutralize it by not mentioning Trump, and what I did right there. All right. But I would not write out a speech. I don't have time. I have 10 minutes. But I would write out keywords for these things. And remember, in your resolution, you can use, you don't have to use all the intro sections that you were taught for your other speeches, but you can use some of them to set it up. You know, the background is an example, maybe speaker credibility, and then maybe preview main points is always a good one to use, besides your thesis, of course. So that's it. You have a piece of paper to write your notes and you write it out. You write keywords instead of doing that. And so when you're giving your speech, you just look down and you talk about it. If you have a reference, then because you may have to say at least 2 of your references that you research in your speech. It could be in your constructive, it could be in your rebuttal. But what you can do is maybe put an asterisk down and maybe the source, and then try to remember what that source said. All right. So lots of ways to do it, but you use keywords. You're not reading out a speech. You don't have time to write out a speech. All right. And remember the event, 3 to 4 minutes for the constructive, 2 to 3 minutes for the rebuttal. All right. So I promised you that, oh yeah, let's see. By the way, this is, I did the Trump one that was on the thing. Let's see what other issues. Police chief placed on leave after flashing badge during traffic stop. Not surprising. But yeah, you can say police reform. Let's say the police reform. The United States has a major police issue that requires immediate reform. That's the resolution right there. So your resolution was saying problem solution. You can say the best way to reform the police is by having seismic you know, shift in individual departments or something, right? And then problem major effects of problem major cop issues across the board, big issue, smaller issue, individual departments and how they are, you know, kept in place because they don't really, you know, unions and so forth, they don't police their own. And then finally, your solution would be Camden, New Jersey. I think it's Camden, New Jersey, fired all their police and they had to go through rehiring to get back onto the force. And they had a process to that. And that's something that needs to be done in police forces that have major issues. See how that works? Keywords, 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 keywords. So enough of that. Let's go ahead and do one of these resolutions because I promised you I was going to do one for the speech, and that's why I'm wearing the hat. All right. I got Shakespeare, by the way. Shakespeare is up. It's statue of Shakespeare. All right. So, oh. All right. So I decided the topic that I was going to debate for you on camera. And I have, by the way, I have a blank card demonstrating that I'm going to be keywording both sides and making it up as we go. All right. So here's the resolution. And I wrote the resolution, but I haven't really thought about it at all. So if you were like you and your partner, and I checked the list, no one has Ukraine, right? No one has Ukraine. No one actually even took, I don't think anyone took military spending. Military spending is usually a popular one, but I don't think anyone took it. Yep, I don't have any, I don't have any, I don't have any Ukraine speakers or military spending speakers. All right, so I'm going to use Ukraine. U.S. needs to keep. So the resolution, there's a side that wants to keep giving money to Ukraine, and there's an opponent who wants to stop giving money, military money to Ukraine. So, right, so for military money to Ukraine against military money to Ukraine. There's the two sides, right? So each side is given the resolution. The resolution is US needs to keep supporting Ukraine war effort. So what does that mean? That means that the person who believes in the US still giving money to Ukraine would put, I need to get a new chair, would be on the affirmative side. The person who wants to stop giving money to Ukraine, oh, excuse me, is on the negative side, right? And so that's how it works. And what you have to do is you're given like 10 minutes of prep time, like 7 to 10 minutes. If you're the first speaker, by the way, of the day, you guys are guaranteed to have 10 minutes. And then afterwards, what happens is um, whenever we have the speech, the next team for prep time goes into the prep time, and most speeches last longer than 10 minutes, but I say 7 to 10 minutes be on the safe side. The shortest I think I've ever had a debate was 8 minutes long. So because it's two speakers. All right. So, anyways, you have plenty of time. So while I'm prepping, now I'm about to do the prep that you would normally have 10 minutes or more to do, 7 to 10 minutes technically. I'm doing it in like a minute. All right. So the affirmative is the resolution. And I'm going to do my little thing I showed you with the thing, the keywords. And remember, the affirmative is on the side of the resolution that said U.S. needs to keep supporting Ukraine war effort. All right. Remember, the resolution had the terms, U.S., Ukraine, but it also had support and it had war effort, right? Indicating that it's not just, money for humanitarian or whatever, it's for the war, military aid. But I use war effort because a lot of times what people with the resolutions will do is I can easily have put military spending, but I use war effort to kind of check to see if you listen to the resolution and using the words of the resolution. Just FYI, make sure you always use the words of the resolution. All right. And then of course, then I take my 3 key points. Now, this one, when we had the previous speeches, your main points were some of the things I said is follow the structure with the 2 sub-points. And we're not going really too much into depth, but it's good in these main points here that you're creating that you mention you mentioned you mentioned like 2 things in each of them, and so you can actually write that in your notes. So I just finished, and then what I'm going to do for each of them is give 2 like points to mention, right? So and that's what I'm doing. But again, all right, see, I wrote keywords down and then I wrote some little key things in it, and that's it. Now I'm on the opposition, and everyone in this class knows that I am a strong supporter of Ukraine. I don't make, you know, as I said at the beginning of the semester, and I keep reminding you whenever I give my opinion in this class, is not to push an agenda, it's to give you a demonstration. Like, okay, here's my opinion, and here is how I formed it, and so forth. So you people in the class know how I am and so forth, and we've mentioned Ukraine because we talked about current events and so forth. But the reason why I'm mentioning that right now is I'm also demonstrating how even if you are against it, how you can debate, something you're against. Let's see. And so that is and then finally, the one thing I can't do for you on this camera is show you how to, well, maybe I can use it doing this, but it's going to be near impossible, is doing the case for the person who is your opposition, because your rebuttal is you're taking a point. You know what I could do? I could just cheat and use my notes. All right. And then finally, by the way, does not hurt to have these things already written out in the sense of the structure, your notes, and then you put your words in there. You put your, no, sorry, it triggered a remembrance. All right. Okay, I am done. I don't know how long that is. You could have done that for me. Okay, so let's do the event. Um, I have my phone here, and my phone will be the timekeeper as always. It's 4 to 3 minutes. Let's go to the timer. I think I've said it in class. I don't like the new setup. All right, here we go. So I'm on the affirmative. The pro-Ukraine people are on the affirmative. The anti-Ukraine spenders are on the negative. I will be doing both of them, and so forth. So the affirmative will go first. Which side is that? Okay, I did both sides. Both sides. All right. Here we go. Oh wait, this is the Ukraine thing. All right. So the pro side, the affirmative will have the hat on. The negative will have the hat off. All right. Let's go. Or maybe I can use a different hat. Ooh, where's the Tron hat? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, where is that hat? I need to put it on this way. Oh, it's right there. No, I'm not going to wear this hat. Okay. Sorry. All right, I'm delayed. Okay, so all right, here we go. Oh yeah, get my timer. It's gonna be hard for me to do all this everything at once. All right, here we go. The thing people forget about U.S. history is how much other countries are part of it, either by our creation or how we've helped others get created as well. We influence France, and even through our misdeeds, we have created others. And that's important to understand the effect of U.S. support or lack of it. Because when it's coming to the current major conflict, um, support Russia's invasion on Ukraine and the war in Ukraine, the U.S. plays a big part in that. Of course, I could talk about it because I've done a lot of research on Ukraine and so forth. And that is why I believe that the United States could still should support Ukrainian military and the Ukrainian war effort through military intervention, military funding. And I'll do this by talking about how Russia is a huge issue, how Russia has done stuff to the United States, and then finally how we need to give support to them. Well, first off, Russia is a bad actor across the world. It's not just in Ukraine. They have done a lot to threaten the world's peace by going after democracy in general, and then also and expanding with military power in Eastern Europe. They have attacked democracy across the world. When England had the Brexit vote, it was in recent French elections. It was discovered that Russia intelligence played a major effort in funneling discontent and even siding with one that affected the vote in the English election. According to the New York Times, the people who were supporting Brexit had a major support through social media from Russia intelligence. And it's not just the democracy, they have physically invaded former Soviet republics. Ukraine is just being added to the list while Russia has threatened other neighbors as well. Let's go into what have they done to us where they need our ire, and that's a big issue. There's the things from the election, and of course the increase of disinformation in this country. In the U.S. election, Russia hasn't attacked us recently. An attack on U.S. democracy is an attack on our sovereignty, and Russia has attacked our sovereignty with their intervention with elections, from hacks to sitting out, siding with one, and even spending money in one election. According to the Washington Post, they gave money to the NRA that was then used in the U.S. election. And it's not even just the U.S. elections, it's also disinformation that is being used in so many different efforts, from our social issues to COVID response. And a lot of the disinformation, some of it has been rooted back to Russia intelligence. And then finally, we need to support our allies. Ukraine is our ally, it's been our allies. Their movement towards us and Western Europe is the reason why they are in the sight of Russia. And so when we realize that we're supporting our allies, we're also supporting our allies against our enemy, which is Russia. We need to send them more weapons and continuing with the weapons. And then finally, we need to continue with the logistics of telling them where the with the intelligence and other things as well. So keep in mind that this is a major issue, in that that we need to keep supporting the Ukraine war effort. All right, sorry, I have to change something in the background. I had CNN up and ads were popping up. All right, that was a little bit longer than I wanted to because I was trying to handle this. Let's go in the negative, right? So that was the affirmative speech. They talked about the resolution. I'm talking about me. Talked about the resolution and then had 3 key points in there, and it's the same basic structure. There was no conclusion, but I did wrap it up by saying I restated the resolution. So just FYI, not a bad idea. Let's turn the card over. And again, this is prep time. So you really, even if you're in the negative, you really are not addressing, and you shouldn't try to address your opponent's speech. Even if you're negative, you're going second, you shouldn't try. You should say that for the rebuttal. Keep with what you prepped for. Don't try to overburden yourself. You're not on the debate team here. This is intro. All right, let's go. The U.S. has a long history of stepping on rakes and being hit in the face with it. It's sometimes like a scene out of The Simpsons, how bad we are about it. And unfortunately, the Ukraine might be one more rake in there. Now, it's important for you to understand Ukraine because that's our money being spent. And I've done some research on it, and I will tell you right now that there's a major problem with the U.S. supporting the Ukraine war effort, and it needs to stop. I'll address this by talking about the possibility of hot war with Russia, the history of proxy wars between our countries, and then finally, lastly, how we can possibly support without giving more to the war itself. Let's first talk about the history of hot wars. And when we think of Russia, we think of the Soviet Union and we think of the Cold War. But actually, there was a lot of hot spots in that war. It wasn't just waiting for possible nuclear strike. There's two main things that stick out. One is the spy situation, and the other is, of course, the threat of nuclear annihilation. In the in our history, in the hot wars, we did have direct conflict with the Soviets, either with our spies in our spy efforts, and then also our own flights that we did over their country. One of them was shot down, and so forth. So we've had some conflict with them. And then the other thing is we've been on the edge of nuclear confrontation. The Cuba Missile Crisis, for example, or the time where the Soviets thought we were there, they had a computer error and they thought we were sending off nuclear weapons. And that leads into the idea of we've had these proxy wars before. There was a hot war, but we've actually done proxy wars in so many different ways with the Soviet Union. Everything from Asia, all parts of Asia to intelligence things in the Middle East and of course in the Americas. Now, there's two I want to look at, that is Vietnam and Afghanistan. Vietnam, we lost. The United States lost after sending our own troops, because it first started off with aid. We were sending aid to the besieged country there, and of course our European allies, France. And that aid led into us intervening, and then us intervening led to humiliating defeat for the United States after World War II. And then just a reminder, Afghanistan, we did just send aid to Afghanistan. But at the same time, according to the University of Pennsylvania study on the timeline in Afghanistan, we were a major contributor to what eventually became Al Qaeda with Osama bin Laden and those folks. So we don't know where this Ukraine funding might lead to. And then finally, there is, of course, the what can we do? Well, one thing is we need to stop spending money into the war effort. And we need to look at we can look at other ways. We can send humanitarian aid, and we can also let the world know that winter is going to probably solve this for us. First off, there's the fact is that we can send humanitarian aid. We can just keep feeding the Ukrainians. It looks like the Russia is running out of goods, and so by just feeding them and keeping them safe with our, let them get their weapons from somewhere else or other contributors, we will probably end up on the winning side anyways, without our possibility of long-term effect. And then the last one is, of course, winter is coming, and this region is known for major battles and militaries losing in the war during winter, and it looks like Ukraine is set up for it. So let it happen and just give them the support, and we don't have to keep spending money in the war effort itself. It will happen itself. We don't need to keep doing it. We need to stop it right away, because there's so much possibility of long-term negative effects. Thank you. Again, I went long, and I honestly am going long because of the whole timekeeper thing. I haven't trained my dog to be a good timekeeper. So both sides did constructive. So what happens is, while the one person is speaking, the other side is writing notes about things they say up and they need to address, right? They need to address. So I am the affirmative again, and then I'm going to address the thing in the rebuttal. 2 to 3 minutes. I'm going to actually, instead of using this thing, because this is slowing me down, I'm just going to use this thing. Well, first off, there is a couple things that I need to address. When I mentioned earlier about supporting Ukraine and supporting war effort, I was specifically talking about the continuation. We've already approved through Congress with the president and through the military, and through our own NATO allies, lots of effort. So we are just continuing something that has been passed successfully through lawmakers, representatives of this government, and not just us, but other places. So this idea that we're not doing something outside, and the Russia really has not responded or threatened us directly, except for maybe propaganda and so forth. In fact, they're weakening as we speak. But a couple of things I want to address that my opponent mentioned, kind of scare you and so forth in it. They mentioned the fact that they brought up the Cold War and the fact that some of it was hot, or the possibility hot war. But our efforts as a democracy compared to them as a tyranny. They're a tyrannical government. They're a tyrannical government now. They're a capitalistic state now, but a tyrannical dictatorship now, or oligarchy, as they like to say, fancy word. And they were communist before, but still a tyrannical government, dictatorship before. They lost. They lost that cold/hot war. They lost it. They lost it. And it was a thing that we need to identify. And then there's also the fact that I'm not keeping track as well as I should, and the fact that my opponent also brought up our efforts in proxy wars like this. They're calling Ukraine a proxy war. A couple things on that one. First off, yes, we had major defeats, but in Vietnam and in Afghanistan too, we weren't really honest. We weren't honest in our funding and how we got into the Vietnam War. We kept things secretive, and a lot of those things that were mentioned by my opponent were secretive in nature. This Ukrainian thing is very transparent. Everything is upfront, and there's a lot of transparency going on. And then, and two, just the other thing about Afghanistan leading to, which is there's a lot, honestly, there's a lot of stuff in there, is yeah, because we were dealing with groups that were not on, how do I say this, on the side of angels, and meaning that we were using bad actors in Afghanistan. We were using the Saudi regime and their funds and their ideology. So yeah, we learned from our mistakes, and Ukraine has now been a long-term ally supported by our other allies. So we're more on the side of that. And so this is just a distraction from my opponent of saying, stop trying to stop something we've been doing for a while. All right, so I am way off on time, I think, and I really need to do better on that. But again, I'm doing this impromptu. I should have set up somebody to be my timekeeper. All right, so I'm waiting for the clock to go around to start the other side. But you see what I did there. I addressed specific things my opponent said. I corrected something or clarified something from my own speech. So there's a lot of things there. All right, so that's essentially what a rebuttal is. You clarify things, you address things that your opponent says, and you respectfully engage in that stuff and so forth. And so with that resolution, trying to increase the war effort and keep funding the war effort, the affirmative likes to say that, and he kept saying that we are continuing something that has been approved by lawmakers and so forth. But guess what? We just had a U.S. election, and there was a change in power in one of our one of the groups that helped pass that military aid, the House of Representatives. So we now have a different perspective, and some of the other countries have different perspectives as well. And so we need to take into account changes in our own administrations and so forth, and how we address this stuff. And then a couple of things I just, it seems like the affirmative wants to have revenge on Russia for their efforts, which is really bad. I'm not saying it was good, what the Russians said. And in fact, it's the opposite. It was bad. They did attack us, but we need to respond to them. And if they're using cyber tactics against us, then we need to do the same with them as well. It doesn't, or we can use sanctions and all those other things. We go back and forth. We don't use another country. If a country attacks us, we go after them. This idea of using another country as a proxy is going into an area that we've had horrible things, regime change, and negative governments put in place because of it. So that's one of the things that we need to address and stop on that. And so forth. Russia is a bad actor. There's not going to deny it. Russia's a horrible country and it's doing horrible things across the globe. But we need to realize that using a country to wage that war against them instead of maybe directly assessing and going after them is probably a path that we've been on before that has led to negative consequences. And there's so much thing I want to just say in it by just saying what I said earlier. We can do what we are doing now, but not with military, but with humanitarian aid, and then also the major support we can give them in winter to probably outlast their Russia counterparts. So, all right, this was everywhere. It is kind of hard to debate myself. I should have had a partner or somebody to be off to the side and doing that. I usually don't. I do these late at night usually to avoid traffic coming through and so forth. And it just seems weird to have. Hey, can you be my timekeeper? So, anyways, yeah. So that's it. That's essentially the event. And that's a setup. And if you need to see it physically again, you can watch this video. You can go to the assignments where it has the order and so forth, and hopefully this gives you an idea how it's done. All you're doing is, again, choose your own adventure. You're taking your research and using some of the techniques that you used in previous to apply it. Rule of three, you introduce your take on the resolution. You have 3 points to bring up. That's it. And then on the rebuttal, it's kind of like the research questions you did in the second event, where you are addressing, instead of the questions that you got in this case, you are addressing the opposition. You are addressing things that maybe you weren't inconsistent about or that you have to clarify. All right. So as always, you have to contact me through Canvas or in around class and so forth. All right. Have a good one. Good luck. Where's the record?